Hey everybody, good Tuesday evening. It's Chief Meteorologist Brad Penovich here with your live weather impact here on a Tuesday evening. It is October 21st, so we've had a little bit of rain. It's something we haven't seen a lot of lately, but it hasn't amounted to much, which seems like more of a common theme. If we look outside, we do have a mix of sun and clouds, and as fast as this front is moving into the region right now, it's moving out almost as quickly. So we had some showers that looked promising on radar, but all that has kind of moved off to the east. Our quad box here shows from Monroe to Lake Norman over towards Charlotte. And look at Dallas, Cameron. That's gorgeous. So that's behind the front, basically starting to see the sun break out there, which I'm excited for because we're going to talk about Comet Lemon tonight, and hopefully we'll have some chances to see it. That would help if the skies would clear by about 8 o'clock. We'll see what we can do for you. Let me show you the radar, though. This will kind of show you what's going on out there tonight because the radar looked more impressive than actually what fell from the sky. I'll show you the radar loop here, and you can see there are some showers out there, but as expected, they kind of fell apart as they pushed off to the east. That wasn't totally unsurprising because the air over us is really dry, so I would anticipate a lot of this is going to just fall apart, and that's kind of what we've been seeing this evening as they've been moving in. We'll kind of zoom in on a couple areas. Around Mecklenburg County, there's a few showers here and there, but they're not amounting to a whole lot. Everything is kind of pushing off to the east. We'll loop this a couple of times. I don't know why it's going so slow. There we go. Kind of a little better view there. You can see how slow those are, or how quickly I should say they're moving east. I quickly wanted to pull up the rain forecast here, see how much actually fell out there, because I'm going to quickly look at the rain totals from today just to show you how little actually fell. So these are the official readings, obviously. 7/100ths of an inch, 0.2 there. Around Monroe, so just not a lot of rain, but at least something has moved through the area in the last 24 hours. The water view shows the whole front kind of pushing through the area, and we'll show you what this looks like on the wide view. I'll kind of draw the front in here. This cold front is kind of back here still, so it's like right there. So even though the clouds and showers are well ahead of it, you're not seeing a whole bunch of clouds or showers closer to the actual front. And just to give you an idea that the front is not really that cool yet because the air behind it's still pretty warm, you're going to have to go a little bit further west to see those cooler temperatures. And I'll kind of show you the wider view here to give you an idea. It's really once you get to the Ohio Valley where the cool air kind of settles in. So tomorrow will be in the 70s still, but the morning lows will definitely be milder when you wake up in the morning. So for the evening hours, if you're heading out there this evening, after sunset, you're going to check out Comet Lemon. We'll have a stray shower here this evening. I'm going to keep the rain chances pretty low, but clouds will probably be breaking up a little bit. So remember, the comet's a tiny part of the sky. You just need a clear spot there to see it. It doesn't have to be the whole sky. Sometimes when we get these astronomical events, people are like, I need completely clear skies. No, it just needs to be clear there. It's like when we get an eclipse. It only needs to be clear where the sun or the moon is, not the whole sky. So there's going to be some chances. And again, if it's a brief look, you probably could get a hole in the cloud deck to see it. Now, something we're going to keep an eye on for tomorrow, and this is something I talked about, I think Tim and I have talked about a little bit, the wildfire danger going into the fall. The winds today have gusted as high as 26 tomorrow. I think we'll see similar wind gusts, but it'll be really dry behind this front. Tonight, we dropped to about 50, but tomorrow, with full sunshine and 70s and that front moving in, that's a really dry, windy day. So dew points are going to be in the 20s and 30s. Relative humidities will kind of max out a little bit. around 25-30%. So that's kind of the perfect ingredients for wildfire danger. And remember, the conditions for wildfires are made by nature, but the wildfires themselves are 90% of the time caused by man. So just be careful. I would definitely not recommend any outdoor burning. Watch the fire pits, the barbecue grills, obviously. Don't discard smoking items. And one of the other ways that fires start a lot is dragging of chains from boats and trailers on the interstate or roads that can give off sparks, and then sparks from mufflers from UTVs and ATVs on trails. So think about if you're going to be off-road and you're going into the woods, maybe setting up your deer stand for the season, just be careful that muffler touching some of that grass, because that can start a fire as well. So let's talk about the comet. Last night we talked about this. Tonight it's going to still be visible with binoculars, a telescope, or camera, but remember, you can't see it with the naked eye. I've had a lot of people asking, where do I look? Look in the northwest sky, but you won't see it unless you have help, okay? It's too dim, and we have too much light pollution here to see it. It's going to max out at like a 4 magnitude, which is right on the borderline of being visible in the darkest of locations in a city or suburban setting, which based on the census, 80% of Americans live in those type of settings. You're not going to have great viewing. But if you're in a really dark location, it's worth a look. But just take out your smartphone, aim it, kind of use that night mode, and you'll be able to pick it up. And I'll show you with Tim coming up in a minute. This was a picture I got. Now, granted, I have a fancier telescope, smart telescope we use. This is about 15 images. This is my first attempt. I actually think it's a pretty bad picture. I'm going to try a better image with better stacking, a little bit better focus, and we'll try to get this fine-tuned a little bit. But it was pretty easy for my telescope to find, but I could track the exact location, and the telescope actually tracks it as it moves. Remember, it's moving independently of the stars behind it and of the Earth, so sometimes it's hard to image these because usually when you're taking astrophotography, you're going with the Earth's rotation. This is moving in a different direction, so it is difficult to kind of pick up. So tonight, will we be able to see it with binoculars if we can clear out the sky? So by 7, you see the front pushing through. So I think there's chance, especially if you live west of I-77, skies will clear out pretty quickly, and we'll be dry the next couple of days. So if we don't see it tonight, don't worry. Like I said, it's going to be visible all the way through next week. So this is around 8 o'clock. This is when I viewed it last night. So if you wait till 8, there's enough breaks in the clouds there. I think you get a chance to see it. So it's worth definitely a look tonight. If not tonight, how about tomorrow? How about Thursday? There's going to be plenty of opportunities. And with the sunset coming a little bit earlier every night, tonight it's 7:41 or 6:41. Excuse me, 6:41, which is coming up here in a couple minutes. It's getting darker sooner, so the opportunities to view it are increasing. Now, let's talk long term, right? What are we going to see long term? I do think we'll see a pattern change next week. Not this week. It's going to stay cold and dry for the rest of the week. But look what happens is going into next week. I'm going to pause this. We're going to go out through Saturday, Sunday, no issues, cool weekend. Look at this big low coming up on Monday. So some rain there on Monday. We go into Tuesday. That moves away. Another system comes down Wednesday, Thursday. And that looks pretty chilly. And don't look now in the mountains there. That is a little wintry mix there. So that's an upper low, and the reason you see that, upper lows bring cold air aloft, so above 4,000, 5,000 feet, hey, we might see some wintry weather. That's not unheard of with an upper low, and it is mid to late October now, so don't be shocked. We see some wintry precip there, so that's something to get excited for if you're a winter weather fan. Look at that, and that moves up the coast and on the backside. So, yeah, that looks really exciting right there for rain more than anything. So that's going to be a cold rain. You get the idea. And next week looks to be a pretty interesting pattern shaping up. And a quick look at the forecast for the weekend. Just a quick look there. Forecast this weekend, looking at temperatures in the 60s, as I said. And we'll go real fast to the Jerry Hunt Supercenter 7-day forecast because we got a lot to get to tonight. I'm just going to go out 10 days in the future because this will show you everything all at once. Cool weekend, but look at next week. A lot of rain around and temperatures in the 60s, morning lows in the 40s. So it could be a very, very good pattern change for us next week. All right, stick around. We got a lot more to talk about today. Actually, a lot going on. We'll talk comet. We'll talk fire danger. That's all coming up with Tim Buckley coming up right after this break. All right, welcome back. Tim Buckley joins me from WFMY. And Tim, I see you guys got a little rain. We got a little rain. It wasn't much, but it was rain, right? Again.
Yeah. We're trying to count the drops, see how many there might be. There's at least half a dozen that we're trying. And I'm trying to figure out, Brad, just how much of this is reaching the ground, right? Because there is some of that dry air that we've been fighting off a little bit. So some of it coming in is what we would call that virga. Yeah. You might notice that fuzziness in the sky this evening. But we have confirmed the drops, at least in Winston-Salem and in High Point. So there was much rejoicing, I guess.
Yeah, it's hard to tell because, like you said, I think the radar looked way more impressive than what was actually making it to the ground. And really, it's moving quick too, Tim. That's the other thing. How much is making it to the ground? And also, if it does rain, by the time you notice it rains, it's like it's done. It like moves out. So certainly, we're probably talking hundredths of an inch, maybe trace amounts. Nothing too crazy because it's just not sitting there long enough. Dew points are in the 40s, so this is definitely having a tough time. And from our Dallas camera here, we actually have full sunshine now, so that band moved through and it almost cleared out immediately. So it's a quick movement system for sure.
It is moving fast, and I don't know that I was expecting that rapid movement, or maybe it just wasn't something I thought about, but it's been a little while since we saw a fast-moving cold front coming in from the west, but we got to get used to that. It's that time of year, and we're kind of in that pattern now where we're getting a new front kind of swirling along the East Coast every couple of days here, so it's going to be interesting to see. That's a really pretty shot of the sunset from Dallas.
Yeah, and during my early evening shows, we could see some pretty dark clouds and some rain shafts, and then it went from that looking like some good rain to like all of a sudden clearing. So it happened pretty quickly. So this is moving out quickly, and I guess the good news with the fast movement of this, Tim, it's going to lead to our first topic tonight, is trying to get a chance to see Comet Lemon, because the sweet time seems to be around 7:45, 8 o'clock or so, and based on how quickly this is moving, we might get lucky, and especially our western viewers might get a chance to see it because it's going to be in the western sky where the skies will likely be clear as opposed to east where there'll be some clouds.
Yeah, for sure. And that seems to kind of be the sweet spot. I know you took some great pictures that you'll show us about. And kind of the viewers that I was talking to that got the best view of it, they mostly cited that 7:45 to 8 o'clock window as really being the best option. And noticing, too, you really have to look low on the sky. So if you have any sort of trees, you really aren't going to have a good luck. Yeah. You might even go to an open field or a parking lot or something. Whatever you can do to get a lower horizon is best.
Yeah, I ran into that even at my house. First of all, I didn't think I was going to be able to see it from my house because I've got neighbors and trees. But by the time I picked it up, I took about 15 pictures, and it was going behind the peak of my neighbor's house, the roof line. So it moved out pretty quickly. So Jeb, bring up my computer quickly, and I'll show you the shot I got, which wasn't great, Tim. I'm going to try to do better tonight. But so this was with my telescope. It's a fancy telescope. It tracks it and stacks it. But this was around 8 o'clock and about 15 images. But just to your point, Tim, I did get some viewer pics with just a straight-up smartphone. So this is Steve sent this to me. So this is from just a smartphone in night mode. Everyone's got that if you have Android or Apple. So this is a wide view. He circled. You can actually kind of briefly pick it out. I love this image, Tim, because it really shows, even if you could see it with the naked eye, it's so tiny you wouldn't probably even know it was a comet. You probably just think it was another star. And he zoomed in on it for me and gave me this shot. So this is what it looked like zoomed in with his phone. So just so everybody knows, you don't need a fancy telescope. Your smartphone can find this and get a picture as long as you have a steady hand or a tripod, which I think is the sweet spot. I know it's like, why would I have a tripod for my phone? But you'd be surprised how good of pictures you can take at night if you can keep that phone steady, Tim.
It's really impressive what they've been able to put in your pocket in a phone nowadays, because you have a lot of control too. I'm an iPhone guy. If you are too, you can control the number of seconds that night mode goes for. Kind of the default is usually 3, but you can set that max all the way to 10 if you go into the settings, and that might give you a little bit better shot of the comet. But important to set your expectations here. I mean, this is what it's looking like on the phone. It's looking a little less with your eyes, so it might not be, what you had in mind necessarily, but it's still really cool to see. And if tonight doesn't work out, tomorrow, crystal clear sky. There should be no issue on Wednesday.
Yeah, you'll have a couple nights, especially I think, the brightest it looks like the 26th through about Halloween. So technically it's closer to the Earth now, than it will be next week. But why is it going to be brighter? Well, part of the reason is it gets closer to the sun, it gets brighter because the sun's solar wind starts interacting with it and it gets brighter. So it might seem weird that, hey, it's the closest tonight, shouldn't it be brighter? Well, it's actually that sweet spot when it's close to us and the sun where it gets brighter. So you got time to check it out. And just so I can show off a little bit, I did last night get this image as well of the Galaxy M31 Adronima, when most people know. And just so you know, this was actually taken from my backyard. Now, this was a lot more fancy. I took this because I wanted to work on my settings for the Comet. This was straight up in the sky last night around 12:30 a.m. And the reason that's important for anybody who wants to take good astronomy pictures, you're looking through the least amount of atmosphere when you look straight up. Near the horizon where the comet is, you're looking through the most amount of atmosphere. So you got a lot of stuff you got to look through. And it's also the darkest part of the sky. Even with light pollution, straight up is going to be the darkest part of the sky. Just so everybody, complete transparency, this is 150 pictures stacked together. So, but you can take pictures like this of deep space stuff if you can keep your camera, shutter open long enough, 15 to 30 second exposures. The hard part with stuff like this, Tim, is you got to move with the rotation of the Earth. So this telescope actually has a motor mount on it, which allows it to rotate with the Earth, so nothing looks blurry as you're taking these long exposures. So it's amazing what you talk about with your phone. It's amazing what these smart telescopes can do in a city, even like Charlotte, in your backyard. And this is with not a lot of work with me, just kind of setting it up. I say 90% of this job with a smart telescope is just setting it up and hoping it works.
I think you might need to do a product review ahead of Santa season for a lot of folks,
sure.
because this seems like the type of technology that just didn't exist a couple of years ago. That's really remarkable.
Yeah, it is amazing, and I don't know. I love stuff like this because this gets you excited for science and stuff that's out there, and I think there are ways to view this. That's why I think you're right, Tim. Setting proper expectations is great because I don't want to deter people from going to look, but you love to get someone that actually could see something so that it gets them to go look again for something else in the future, which is pretty awesome. Something else we got to talk about, Tim, obviously, is the drought and the fire danger. So today, it was pretty windy and dry. We actually had a couple controlled burns out there. But I know you built almost a similar graphic to I did today. This fire risk tomorrow. We got special weather statements up for I think every county in North Carolina for a heightened fire risk tomorrow. Essentially a high fire danger day or a moderate fire danger day. And this was one of our concerns going into the fall season with the drought, wind, dry conditions, and drought. We tend to have issues with fire this time of year.
And it's no surprise, we've talked about this, we've mentioned it, but I think we will be a little nervous probably the next couple of weeks and months just to kind of see what happens. So raising awareness is part of that, encouraging folks to try and not burn as much as you can outside. But the main ingredients are all common sense. It's dry air, it's a breeze, and there's fuel on the ground, whether it be sticks or twigs or down trees from Helene or just leaves. We've got leaves falling already in the Piedmont. That's only going to get worse. So we're going to watch that pretty carefully. I saw there were brush fires in Raleigh over the weekend, along the interstates even. So this is something that is going to keep on being an issue.
Yeah, and one of the things I mentioned, obviously the weather, Tim, is a big contributing factor to the conditions, but as we know, like 90% of fires are caused by people, right? It's carelessness, sometimes mistakes. But one of the things, I think most people understand, out of control fires that in your backyard or burning debris, that's the number one cause. But also arson, obviously, people doing it on purpose. Smoking, cigarettes, cigars, whatever.
Sure.
Discarding those materials. But one of the things, and when I lived in Michigan, that I thought was really interesting, one of the ways they saw a lot of fires start in the backcountry or in fire roads was people in ATVs without spark arresters on their muffler. So think about this time of year, you go hunting or camping and you go down a fire trail, a fire road, which is used to access the woods, and a spark shoots out of your muffler and goes into dry brush. It can start a fire. Or even backing a truck up into tall grass where the muffler sits on that grass can start a fire. And then the other thing is dragging of chain. So you probably have seen like someone with a boat or a trailer with a chain is dragging on the interstate and it's giving off sparks. That's another way a lot of these fires start on the side of roads because sparks are going off from those chains. I saw a muffler dragging on a car the other night, and that's all I could see was sparks. And I'm thinking, man, that's one way a fire starts. So there's little things like that, Tim, that you don't think about that actually can start fires pretty easily.
And all of that you just mentioned is a non-issue in normal conditions. Like in the summertime, it's not a problem. If you have humidity, you have recent rainfall, you have green grass, all those things. We're at a point now where we're more vulnerable. So that could be a big problem, and something you got to be mindful of that you don't usually have to think of.
Yeah, and with the drought conditions probably getting worse, I mean, I'll be curious to see what the drought monitor says on Thursday because the fire risk is increasing. I have a feeling it's going to be a little worse than it normally would, because that's one of the main indicators for the drought monitor is when wildfire threat increases, they usually up some of these levels on the drought monitor. So that's something we'll keep an eye on. Now, something we could use, we don't want a hurricane, Tim, but we've got something going on in the tropics. We've got Melissa. We called this yesterday. I think this was not a shock to any of us. But what I think is shocking is like the 5-day cone, which I don't even want to call it a cone. Maybe we call it a blob, because the Hurricane Center basically thinks this thing's just going to sit down there for like 5 days, which is really problematic for Haiti, Jamaica, possibly Eastern Cuba. And it also makes for a lot of uncertainty long range. Like, and where's this thing going to go? I mean, could it recurve or just die down there? So what are your thoughts? I think there's a possibility this never makes it out of the Caribbean, or it recurves and goes out to the middle Atlantic.
There are lots of options on the table. Like you said, it seems like a quick escape is not really in the cards anymore. That was on the table maybe the last couple of days, that maybe it got picked up and left fairly quickly. But it seems like it's going to sit there kind of like someone at the train station, just waiting for the right ride. And who's to say right now what's going to be the factor that picks it up? I know some of the models, some of the ensembles that we use are showing it kind of getting accelerated away next week, but that's still a long way away. So to call this cone a blob or whatever you like to call it, it's basically stationary for a while. And so guaranteed it'll be a rainfall problem for Jamaica, for Haiti, for these parts of the Caribbean. But beyond that, we really don't know. The other wild card is that we're going to have a huge jet stream dip in the eastern U.S. Hard to say what it'll do for us. Very remote possibility, but sometimes that can pick up a tropical system too and at least influence where it might want to go. It
could tug it back to the west, or at least the moisture pull it back to the west. What is interesting about that pattern, Tim, and I had been looking at this it's basically a cutoff low. It's an upper low with this jet stream. That's pretty cold air aloft, and I don't know if you've looked at some of the long-range guidance, but for the mountains in particular next week, obviously this is a great pattern for the drought, right? We get some moisture here early in the week. But as that cutoff low happens, look a little wintry mix possible in the mountains. And honestly, I don't normally like to get too crazy with stuff this far out, but from a synoptic setup, this makes sense because this is cold air aloft. This is going to be a chilly rain with a dip in the jet stream. And, we see this wet snow rain mix sometimes this time of year when we get these cutoff lows like this. So you're right. This is a really interesting pattern next week. And I think it's interesting for several reasons. One, it is just by itself, but the fact that it hasn't really rained in like 2 months consistently, probably the other reason this is a big deal next week.
I mean, if you want to get nuts, let's get nuts. You can talk about the snow in October or in November in the South. If you want that to happen, you need exactly that. You need that cold air aloft and that upper low aloft. You'll remember this a couple years ago. I don't remember which year it was. They got snow in Columbia, South Carolina on one of the first days of November. And it wasn't baby snow. It was real, and it was inches. And it was essentially unpredictable. I mean, who would have forecasted that? But that's what was there, was a very cold upper level low. And so we'll see what happens. Unusual stuff going on. They got big lake effect rain coming up the next couple of days in Buffalo. And this upper low will do something next week for somebody, I would guess.
Yeah, and you're right, Tim. I remember that event. It was crazy. I remember some of the first social media images came in on 77 between Charlotte and Columbia, and I was like, this can't even be real, because it was absolutely big flakes, heavy snow, just coated everything immediately, and that was just a bizarre. it was kind of a upper low, and then we had some banding features. It was just like the perfect setup for some isolated thunder snow even down in that area. But the interesting thing is, Tim, I think we're definitely getting to that time of year where the jet stream's dipping down. As you mentioned, several cold fronts coming down. This is kind of the transition season. We're going from summer to fall, and I know it hasn't felt like it for the past 2 months, everybody, but this is kind of the beginning. This is how seasons change. We get into some volatile weather, and I think late October and especially November is kind of known for this, right? You get these kind of weird, crazy patterns setting up. And anytime you can bring tropical moisture into the mix, not that I'm saying this is it, but everyone remembers the movie The Perfect Storm or the book The Perfect Storm. You had kind of the setup. You had a tropical system and a big low pressure system come down, and it created, this massive nor'easter over the Northeast. And so that's always something we watch for this time of year.
And drought or not, it is possible, depending on what happens, that somebody up and down the East Coast could get some flooding out of this going into next week. Just depending on what happens. We don't know that yet, but just because you're in a drought doesn't mean you can't have excessive rain too. Both of those things can be true. So we'll watch. We have a ways to go. The models have been not consistent yet, but a major pattern change seems to be a pretty good bet at this point.
All right, but last but not least, something else that happens a lot this time of year, big swings in temperature, Tim. We talked about this yesterday. I thought we'd see some 35, 40-degree changes. We did. We were 33 in Charlotte, but what was your spread today?
So we went from 42 this morning to 76 this afternoon.
Wow.
So we had 34. The most I saw was Albemarle. I think they were at like 42 or 43.
Yeah. So real quick, what is your all-time biggest diurnal change in Greensboro?
47.
And for Charlotte, it's 48. So just to give you an idea, it can be crazy this time of year and in the spring. It seems to be spring and March, the big swings in temperature. So that's all we have time for tonight. Stick around. We've got more news coming up right here.